actually, this is a project that I'm going to talk about these development areas in the city that so far has been, so proud to say, success in terms of starting the plan. And we'll see maybe in some months or years how this ends up. Basically, it is we call it our pilot project for proving us wrong or right on all the ideas that I've been talking about of the vision of the city, the strategies, the planning, etc. It is an area called Granadas. It's a neighborhood in the city. It is around 400 hectares. It's quite large. This is city center. This is Chapultepec Park, which is kind of like our central park with all the museums and so on. This is a very wealthy area. It's a very wealthy neighborhood here. And on the north side of this neighborhood, it used to be an industrial site that now, after years of changing the plan, they changed the zoning of this area. So that allowed to make a huge conversion. And because of the influence of this very well-developed area of the city, because this is like the most developed area of the city, even with this area, has allowed to push further the development, but with a lot of problems within that we talk about. It is located quite near. It's around 6 kilometers from the city center. It's also very near the Chapultepec Park, which is a very natural source of greenery and water and so. And so the location is very strategical. And if you see it here, it's not that clear, but we have all the metropolitan area here. And the ring that works like this connecting street with the central area of development where the opportunities of employment are. So then there's a street that goes through here, you will see it later on, that works like a bypass to go into the working areas. So then this site works as this, like going through from the suburbs to the city center. So one of the biggest issues of the area is actually mobility. We're going to see it how it is now. It's around 20 neighborhoods, and this is the study area. You will see also the trace of the blocks, but basically these 2 blocks here is not blocks. These are neighborhoods, of course. But these 2 neighborhoods are the ones that changed the zoning. So that's like the biggest development node. And of course, the study case is larger because of the influence of the affection of the area. This is Polanco area. As I mentioned, this is a very wealthy neighborhood. This street here, it's called Masaryk, actually, from the Czech president, and it's like our Fifth Avenue. It's the avenue with all these Louis Vuitton and Gucci shops. It's the mile, the Golden Mile of Mexico City, and so this whole area it's quite wealthy. It's full of these very big houses, and now it started to change with middle-sized buildings, but very, very upper level. And then you can see the blocks, how different they are. Like this is parks, these are parks. And here you have blocks that were former industries. So then there was no master plan whatsoever. They just changed the zone code there. And they allowed these big portions of land to be reconverted from industrial to mixed-use areas. The surface is around 300 hectares. The population is around 36,000 people in this polygon. But that's from the census of 2010, and the development started in 2008. So we don't really know how many people are there. We estimate it's around 40,000 new people coming there, with around 11,000 new households. But it's just an estimation. We're not really aware on how many we're talking about. This is how it looked before. This is the street that I was mentioning that works kind of like a bypass. It's a rapid highway with like bridges that takes you to the suburbs and that crosses the area. And then you have, of course, this typology of plots that are huge surfaces of post-industrial sites compared to this small-scale neighborhood area. So it's a very heterogeneous conformation of the territory. And since there's no such master plan, as I said, they just allowed it to change. So it looks like this now. This is a shopping mall, for example. This is a museum. It's quite famous museum. And this is a mixed-use building with like a shopping center also. This is another shopping mall and offices and so on. The biggest developers are in this area. I mean, like Carlos Slim, this richest man on earth that you might heard of, owns the whole site there. Santander Bank is there. All these huge banking companies and so on are there. And this is the comparison of the land use in 1997 program. Land use. We had changed to housing of 5 levels with 30%. That's how it changed from industrial to allowing 5 levels. So then we had a potential of 30 million square meters of housing, which is huge. I mean, we're going to see how huge this is. And this was the first step that we gave in reconverting the area. But then, in 2008, they allowed up to 10 levels of building. So that represented 2 million more square meters of construction. But, of course, there are other instruments in the law that allow you to buy more levels of construction so that even you can get up to 20 levels of construction in the area. So then we have those buildings. We have all these buildings on the way. Many of them are already done. They're already finished with people occupying them. It's around 60% developed already. And this is the reality. I mean, you can have from very small houses, as you saw in the former pictures, because it's not all equal, to these huge developments going on, this and this. Some of them have proper amenities towards the streets, but many of them are just like fenced, gated communities. And this is a very, very problematic thing because there are no ways from government to control so far this development of creating a huge building with all the amenities inside. And that's how they sell it to people. Buy safety, get your own place with your own tennis court, with your own swimming pool, with your own park inside. And this is how people are cheated, actually, because, yeah, they do have it inside, but then they cannot go out. They cannot walk on these streets. They have to take the car to go buy milk because there are no, like, proper shops around, like neighborhood shops. And because there was no master plan, there is no, in terms of mobility, This is the 400 hectares, and there's only one metro line that goes through. So you can imagine the problematic. We're talking about, I don't know, 40,000 people living here with only one metro station in the area. Another one here in Polanco area. And of course the whole problematic started because these neighbors that are very empowered, because they're very wealthy, they're very rich, started to complain that, oh, all my streets are packed with cars because people going and coming from here. You need to do something, government. You haven't done anything. But they are the ones that are paying for the development. So it's really a contradiction, right? We allowed the development without planning, and they also contributed to the development without considering all the others, all the other factors that affected the city. There are, of course, many of these microbuses that I talked about, routes that go through these streets here and there, that kind of feed the area, but they are not enough, of course. And because of the level of the social level that the area is oriented, there's a lot of car ownership in this place. The parking occupation is huge. It's really, really large amount of cars, a lot of parking there. It's around around 2 car spaces per household in the whole area. So you can imagine how many cars we have there. The housing issue is also because of this, the orientation of upper class housing, then there's not such a mixture. So it's becoming really a kind of a ghetto inside the city with all these gated buildings. With this is the typical entrance for these kind of developments. You have some like super fancy entrance with policemen here in this glazed, like mirrored glass cabin. And you have to register, you have to give all your names, you have to give an ID just to visit your grandmother who lives there or your friends who live there. And many times they don't even have a parking for visitors, or they just packed with the visitor parking, so then you have to park I don't know where. It's really, really problematic. It's really problematic. But this is the way of life they're selling, and it's successful in a way. For them, for their business. Speaking of public space, the occupation, there's no regulation of like parking on the streets. You can park anytime without paying. You can occupy the spaces as you wish. I mean, this is an entrance for cars, and cars are there all the time because there's no spaces on the streets for parking. There is no control. Maybe it's not necessary to have the parking spaces, but rather there has to be control on the parking spaces. There are no proper parks in the area. There are no public spaces for staying, like a plaza or anything. The shopping malls work as this public space, but of course they're gated. So then at 10 p.m. they're gone. They don't have this permeability to the city. There are some public facilities, like a hospital and a sports center, but they are also private owned, so it's not for everyone. This is the Spanish hospital, and it's quite an expensive hospital. And the club, the sports club, it's also not that expensive, but it's not for everyone. So it's also very uneven, the facilities that the area has. But there is a lot of potential, a lot of potential. I mean, we have this huge, very new theater made by a very famous Spanish architect. We have this museum, contemporary art museum. In front of it, there's another contemporary art museum with the largest collection of contemporary art in Latin America. We have this park. It's a linear park. It was a former railway, because it was an industrial site, and they converted it into this linear park that is paid by all these developers and controlled by the government. So it's like this action that is quite okay in the city, but it's the only one. And it's not enough, of course. I mean, compared to all this, how much this costs, how much this costs, how much this costs, this is nothing for them. So they realize that. They realize that it's not enough. They realize that they need maybe a metro line, a metro bus, they need a park, they need the public space, they need schools, they need markets. And again, well, putting on the vision of what we want to the city to be compact, polycentric, dynamic, and equitable, we work on all these themes that I've mentioned already: the public space, the mobility, the housing, the land, the economy, and the environment. So then the story of the project started this year around March, that the initiative of the Ministry of Urban Development was to do something about it. Let's do something with this chaos, because it's a total mess. We have a lot of development, but we have nothing else. And the developers started to see that, yes, there is a lot of trouble. Neighbors started to complain. This traffic jams started to happen more and more, and they started to sell less housing. So then they said, okay, yeah, let's discuss this issue. And in August of this year, there was a big action by the ministry, and they suspended any paperwork. So you cannot do any paper administration work for developing your building anymore. So it's kind of frozen now, the development of the area. And it's been frozen already for 4 months. No paperwork, nothing going on there. We stopped the development now. There's a huge pressure, of course. People have invested hundreds of millions of dollars there already in the area. But we are aware that if we keep on going with that, it's going to collapse sooner or later. So after that suspension, we called 7 of the biggest developers of the area, the biggest companies, and we signed an agreement in November. It was a very long negotiation process, but we finally signed an agreement in November 5th, in which they commit to pay the master plan. We commit to coordinate the master plan, and we have hired different experts in different areas to make the master plan of this zone. And so it's a bit more than a month that the agreement has been signed. And in these past weeks, I've been only working in signing contracts and hiring these experts, urbanists, mobility experts, NGOs, and everything to make the master plan for this area. All paid by private initiative, by the developers of the area. So the vision of this, and we went to other examples in the world. How do they manage to do wonderful projects in other cities, like Hafen City in Hamburg, or at 22 in Barcelona? How do they manage to reconvert areas? And of course, it's the master plan tool that allows them to envision a place and start to control the land use and start to control the development, and then letting them go, and at the same time engaging them to contribute to the construction of the whole, not only their own buildings, their own developments, but the public. So this has been our kind of ideals or examples to work with, and so that's kind of the vision, to regenerate these subutilized places already that are in the city, and how to develop them in this already tissue, in the urban tissue that it's already there. So it's the profit of land that we're considering. But of course, not only about profit, make the profit of the land by building development, but also, real estate, but also the whole rest, right? The public. Of course, the economy diversification, we are aware we need in that area not only these big shopping malls, big Costco club or these Walmart shops, but also like small neighborhood dry clean or stationery that isn't existent in the area. So it's really about also balancing economy through the opportunities of the land use, through the opportunities of what we have as a tool. The extension of the public, as I mentioned, also it's important. So it's really about how we're going to get public, how we're going to get land to make it like a park, for example. How, where, how are we going to buy it? How are we going to get it? How are we going to say the developer, okay, stop building here. This is going to be a donation for the public space, and you have to take care of it. So it's going to be part of yours, but it's public, right? So all these tools are part of the master plan idea of to be constructed. And so then this is what we draw, like our imaginary vision: public space, public facilities, the market, the school, etc. Mobility, we have changed the, in this new government that started last year, mobility planning have changed the paradigm of mobility, and it's quite challenging still because people don't really understand yet, but pedestrians are first. Pedestrians are always first, always, always first. Then non-motorized mobility, then public transportation, then goods transportation, and at the end, the private-owned automobile. That is the pyramid of mobility. So then always when we do analysis on mobility, the response have to be first what's with the pedestrians, what's with mobility in the area. And of course in this neighborhood hasn't been that way yet. So switching these concepts are really hard still, even with the urban planners that we work with. They are all about, because the problem is the car, then they said, okay, maybe we need like a second highway instead of getting rid of the cars and setting opportunities for pedestrians. But changing those mindsets are the challenge now. And in our side, as a government, as an observant and as a coordinator of the project, he's been like really pushing them to orientate all the efforts on these principles of what we vision as the city. Public transportation, we don't know yet if we're going to build a metro line, or we're going to build a metro bus line, or we're going to have a local bus. We don't know yet. It's part of these master plan answers that we're looking forward. And mixed use. And this is also a very, very, very interesting topic, because as you saw in the zoning code that has been changed, they defined it mixed use with 10 levels. And we found out that naming in a zone code plan mixed use is not enough. We need to be more accurate of what we want with the land use. We want to say now in this master plan, we want a school within your building of housing. We want a kindergarten here. We want sports facility of public orientation in this other development. We have to be more accurate on what we want from what we need, what we see we need in the analysis of the site. So the mixed use is it's really tricky and very challenging for us. Of course, the active ground floor plan. This is another concept in urbanism that is very important for us, because this is also what creates security. As I mentioned, security in places like Mexico, it's a huge, huge thing. And we have agreed in the office and with many people that we work with that security is not achieved with surveillance cameras or policemen. It is achieved with people in the street, with children on the streets. Like the indicators of security are actually children on the street or women walking alone in the street. If we see women, if we see children there, then that place is safe. And how we're going to make it is also occupying the space. And the way that we can do it from the relationship of the building towards the street is these active ground floors, because they are the ones that allow this exchange, permeability of the private and the public. So this is a very important issue that we face. So we imagine, for example, when we have a new development there, we're going to say, okay, if you have this plot, you cannot have the entrance with your policeman here and your control. You have to make commercial areas all around. And you have to be active 24/7. You have to find out how to make the public space to be used throughout the day so that there's always people there, there's always activity. And that's how you're going to create a very safe environment. So this is the sum of all these things that we envision for the city, for the zone. As I mentioned, in August 5th, there was the agreement signed, the suspension of activities in the area. And then after that, we had to move to run for making the whole project of how we're going to make the master plan. And so we started to get involved with the government and private initiative to sign the agreement. This is the area, the official area that has been locked, so to say. And that's going to be the master plan. And the objectives are to generate a diagnosis of the zone, to identify, define, and specify the measures that can improve the functionality, considering the development as a part of a local and regional system, establish the vision of the city as an urban ecosystem, not only as a zoning code thing, but rather a system that works with other variables, and so that to change the way of thinking from the neighborhoods, for example, the local neighborhoods, that the development is like a kind of a, I don't know how to translate this, but like a necessary sickness, sort to say, like, yeah, we need development, but it's ugly. And instead of seeing it this way, it's like, okay, change the vision and put it on your side and make the development part of the improvement of the city. So then you build up city. So then we started to make this kind of workflow in which the ministry is the general coordination. Then the diagnosis, we're going to have a survey of 800 people in the city. It's actually this week starts this public survey with 3 types of population: the ones that live there, the ones that commute to the area, and the ones that use the area as shopping places or entertainment places, just like visitors of the area. Then we have the urban plan that will go through the process, a mobility plan that's already on the way, cost-benefit study, and this is the first time actually in the history of the city that we do a plan that includes a cost-benefit study and a legal and instrumental plan. So it's a study that includes from like the physical urban mobility to a social survey to cost-benefit and legal instrument studies. This is how we built up the strategy. And also we have a social integration plan that has to do a lot with how we're going to communicate what we're doing. How do people will understand what we're trying to say here about building up a metro station where people here don't use metro, they use their cars. And how are you going to tell them metro is good for you, you need it? So it's really, really a very important part of the plan that we consider it when building up the strategy. So this is more functional, but it's the whole workflow of what we are working with and how all these super complex disciplines will merge together from like geographical data, mobility studies, how these mobility studies will feed the spatial strategy, and all this cost benefit here will start to feed up also the spatial, etc., etc. This is a very complex workflow, but this is how we've been working with. So far, as I mentioned, there's the public survey started. We personally check even the questions that are asked to the people, because we want the survey not only to give us the perception of the zone as like the lack of services and so, but also mobility oriented questions to find out the origin and destinations in the area, so that we can actually start to shape out maybe the routes for transportation or maybe other things. And also the cost benefit, we think that will help us to find out how much development costs to the city, and then how much can be from that development invested in the city. And because so far the tools for making this development from the government to like make the taxation of the buildings or things like that are very discretional. They are like, you know, negotiable. Like they sit on the table and they say, okay, I'm going to build this skyscraper, and then the government says, okay, then give me just this park. Or there's never like a tool that tells us exactly how much you're benefiting, how much you're affecting the city, then how much you need to contribute back. And this is the study that we're trying to make. And in the legal part, this first public-private initiative to make a master plan, as I said, it's the first time we make it, will tell us also what are the instruments we can do without changing basic things from the law or from all these norms that can allow us to get opportunities in the development. It is very tricky and it's very, very complex. It's very in the legal side, but what we imagine is that the urban planners, the urban designers will make like the ideal of what we want for the site, and then the group of lawyers will give us tools. Okay, we can go here and there. Of course, taking the chance of the law many times is not accurate enough to tell us what to do. So then if we tell it what to do, then it's like the opportunity spaces. It's a really like chirurgical exercise in instrumental areas and in planning areas to allow this to happen. The project is considered to be super fast because of the pressure of the development, as I mentioned. So it will last 24 weeks. It's only 6 months for doing the master plan. And we're trying to have the results in 6 months to have a better approach on what to do in the area. So we're hoping for the best. It's a great accomplishment to just already being able to sit these huge sharks developers there and sign the agreement and pay for a master plan. And I think this is a quite accomplishment. And now the challenge is from our side, not only coordinating the whole project, but as I said, communicating it. And this is, I think, the next thing we're going to see about this participatory planning.